I had my hand on my jacket and my phone half-typed with the words, "She's not coming." I'm heading out when the front door of the restaurant burst open and a woman came through it, like she'd been chased there by weather. Which, as it turned out, she had been. I almost didn't notice the little girl at first. The way you sometimes don't notice the most important detail in a scene until your brain has finished processing the chaos of everything else. But then I did notice her, holding tight to the woman's hand, wearing a purple jacket and sneakers that lit up pink and blue with every step, and staring directly at me with an intensity that had nothing childish about it at all. That's when everything about my evening, and as it turned out my entire life, quietly rearranged itself without asking my permission first. Let me back up. Because none of this makes sense without the ordinary version of my life that came before it. My name is Marcus. I'm 30 years old and I manage the warehouse at a hardware and building supply store called Coleman's, a family-owned operation that's been selling everything from PVC pipe to power tools for almost 40 years. It is not, by any reasonable measure, an exciting job. Most days I'm counting inventory, fixing misplaced orders, making sure the shelves don't look like a storm came through, and solving the kind of small, solvable problems that I find genuinely satisfying in a way I've stopped trying to explain to people who don't already understand it. A missing screw can be replaced. A crooked hinge can be straightened. People are harder. I learned that lesson early, and I've never found a reason to unlearn it. My life outside of work was simple in a way that I had mostly made peace with. I'd wake up, go to work, come home to a quiet apartment, heat up whatever leftovers I had, watch a few home repair videos because apparently I can't get enough of fixing things even in my downtime, and fall asleep. I wasn't lonely in any dramatic sense. My phone just didn't light up much after 9 at night, and sometimes in the specific quiet of a Tuesday evening. I wondered whether having someone to come home to would make the silence feel less like silence and more like peace. That Friday night blind date was my cousin Janelle's idea, which should have been my first warning, because Janelle's ideas have a track record. She told me about a woman named Eliza, 28, a graphic designer working at a print shop downtown. "She's a little busy, a little scattered, but she's good people," Janelle said. "Just don't give her your warehouse face." I didn't know what my warehouse face was supposed to look like from the outside, but I agreed anyway. Mostly because Janelle has a way of making refusal seem more effortful than just showing up. We were supposed to meet at a place called Riverside Cafe at 7. I got there 5 minutes early, wearing the cleanest shirt I own and a pair of jeans without any sawdust on them, which felt like a genuine accomplishment given the state of most of my wardrobe. The place was packed, families, couples, groups of teenagers, the constant clatter of dishes and the hiss of an espresso machine working overtime. I found a booth in the back corner, ordered coffee, and waited. 7:10, 7:15, 7:23. Still no message. I want to be clear that I wasn't irritated because I thought I was owed anything. I was irritated because if you make plans, you show up, or at the very least you send a text saying you're running behind. I opened my phone and started typing to Janelle. "She's not coming. I'm heading home." I hadn't even hit send when the front door flew open. Woman rushed in like she'd just escaped a storm. Brown hair coming loose from a messy ponytail, a crossbody bag sliding off one shoulder, face flushed and visibly panicked. She was holding the hand of a little girl, maybe 8 years old, in a purple jacket and sneakers that flashed pink and blue with every step. The woman's eyes scanned the room and landed on me. I watched the exact moment she realized I was about to leave, her expression shifting through embarrassment, relief, and panic almost simultaneously. Like a flipbook running too fast. She pulled the little girl toward my booth, breathing hard. "You're Marcus, right?" "I'm Eliza. I'm so sorry. I know I'm late. I know this looks terrible. She stopped and looked down at the girl. The child was staring at me with intense focus. Not the usual curious kid stare. She was studying my face, my hands, my mouth, like she was reading something beyond words. Then she tugged on Eliza's sleeve and started signing. I froze. I recognized American Sign Language immediately, though I wasn't fluent. I'd worked alongside a deaf coworker named Russell for 2 years at Coleman's, and he'd taught me enough to get by in the warehouse. Basic instructions, basic courtesies, the kind of functional vocabulary you pick up out of necessity and respect. Eliza watched the girl's hands, her face softening despite the chaos, then turned to me, her voice quieter now. "She says you have kind eyes." Every ounce of irritation I'd been carrying for the last 23 minutes disappeared. Just like that. I looked at the little girl and kept my hands where she could see them. My signing was slow and probably grammatically questionable, but I tried. Thank you. I like your shoes. Very cool. Her whole face lit up. She looked down at her sneakers, stomped once so the lights flashed, and grinned at me like I'd just confirmed something important. Eliza stared at me like I'd performed a magic trick. I shrugged off my jacket and sat back down. Well, I said, I'm not leaving yet. She stood there for a second like she couldn't quite believe it. I slid the menu toward her. Sit down. Have you two eaten? The girl looked up at Eliza, who still seemed a little stunned. Marcus, I should explain. She's not mine. Her name is Nora. She's my niece. My sister was supposed to pick her up from school, but she didn't show, and she's not answering her phone. My friend was going to watch her for an hour, so I could come here and apologize to you, but her car broke down. My phone died. Everything just happened too fast. I didn't know what else to do except bring her with me. She was talking fast, like she was afraid that if she paused, I'd get up and walk out. I know this isn't how dates are supposed to go. If you want to leave, I get it. I'm really sorry. I looked at Eliza, exhausted. Hands still shaking slightly, and then at Nora, who was now drawing on the condensation of her water glass with her fingertip. Completely unbothered by the adult crisis unfolding around her, I had two choices. Go home, eat cold leftovers, and feel justified about being stood up. Or stay with a woman who was barely holding it together and a kid who had just informed me, with complete confidence, that I had kind eyes. I flagged the waitress. Another coffee for me, hot tea for her, and a kid's menu for Nora. Eliza looked at me. You don't have to do this. I know. Then why are you? I glanced at Nora, then back at Eliza. Because my usual Friday night is reheated food and falling asleep on the couch. This is already more interesting. For the first time since she'd walked in, Eliza smiled for real. And that's how the strangest date of my life began. Eliza kept apologizing. She apologized for being late. She apologized for bringing Nora. She apologized for the noise in the cafe. She apologized because Nora needed to see people's mouths when they spoke. She apologized because her phone had died and she couldn't text ahead. I finally had to stop her. Eliza, I said, if you apologize one more time, I'm going to make you eat all the vegetables on my plate. Nora watched us, not understanding every word, but when Eliza laughed, she laughed too. I asked Nora with simple signs what she wanted to eat. She signed fast. I only caught chicken and fries. Eliza translated. Nora wants chicken fingers and fries. Lots of fries. I nodded seriously. Reasonable request. Nora looked at Eliza, then signed something else. Eliza covered her mouth to hide a smile. She says you understand more than most grown-ups. She's a good judge of character. The air slowly started to settle. I learned that Eliza had been a graphic designer for 6 years, hated about 60% of her clients, but still loved the specific moment when a finished print came off the machine. Nora was in 3rd grade, loved drawing, hated math, and was obsessed with light-up shoes. Her mother, Eliza's older sister Dana, had been struggling since her husband left a few years back. And lately Dana had been disappearing more often. Leaving Nora with Eliza. Eliza told the story lightly, but I heard everything she wasn't saying. She wasn't just an aunt. She was the family's backup plan. Every time Dana fell apart, Eliza had to stand up. Every time Nora got forgotten, Eliza had to run. Every time their mother said, "You're so good with Nora," it really meant nobody else wanted to carry that weight. Does this happen a lot? I asked. Eliza glanced at Nora, who was coloring a hamburger on the kids' menu purple. More often lately. Dana says she needs time to find herself, but herself always seems to be somewhere far away from Nora's school. I didn't laugh. The tiredness in her voice was too real. Are you angry at her? Eliza stared into her tea. Sometimes. Then I feel guilty for being angry. Then I get angry that I have to feel guilty. I nodded. Sounds like an old plumbing system. She looked at me, confused. I manage a hardware warehouse, I said. This is the deepest I get. Everything leaks a little, so no one fixes it properly. Then when the floor floods, everyone asks why you didn't mop faster. Eliza studied me for a long moment. You talk in the strangest way. It works for me. She smiled, but her eyes were a little red. The dinner lasted longer than I expected. After Nora finished eating, she pulled out a tablet and started drawing. She drew the three of us sitting in the booth, Eliza, me, and herself, with shoes glowing like stage lights. In the picture, I had a slightly square head. I signed slowly. Is my head really that square? Nora laughed so hard she nearly dropped the stylus. Eliza watched the moment and something in her face changed. I didn't know exactly what she was thinking, but her expression softened in a way that made my throat tighten slightly. When we finally left the cafe close to 9, Eliza apologized 3 more times in the parking lot. I stopped her beside her car. Eliza, yeah. This is the strangest date I've ever been on. Her face fell. I kept going. But it's not the worst. Actually, I want to see you again. She looked at me, half exhausted, half hopeful. Even if next time might still include Nora? I glanced into the back seat. Nora had fallen half asleep, her shoes still flashing faintly in the dark. Especially if it includes Nora, I need payback for the square head. Eliza laughed for real this time, no hesitation. We exchanged numbers. As her car pulled away, Nora woke up just enough to sign something through the window. I didn't catch all of it, but I think it was goodbye. Over the next few weeks, I started stepping into Eliza's life in small, ordinary ways. Saturday morning coffee. Thursday night takeout. Trips to the park so Nora could draw trees. I practiced more signs. Nora corrected me with the seriousness of a teacher whenever I messed up, which was often. One evening I stopped by Eliza's apartment and found Nora sitting on the floor looking like her entire world had collapsed. Her small wooden art shelf had fallen off the wall. Markers, paper, and watercolor paints were scattered everywhere. Eliza sighed. It fell this morning. Nora tried to tape it back up. It didn't work. Nora looked at me, trying to stay calm, but her eyes were glassy. I sat down beside her and checked the wooden board and the damaged wall. I signed slowly. Want to fix it together? Nora blinked, then nodded hard. I didn't fix it for her. I just guided her step by step, sanding the edges, wiping off old glue, marking new spots, using better anchors, holding the level steady. I handed her a pencil so she could mark the screw holes herself. Eliza stood in the kitchen doorway, quietly watching. When the shelf was back on the wall, Nora arranged her art supplies on it and then wrapped her arms around my waist. She signed, "Thank you." I signed back. "You did good." Nora smiled so wide her whole face lit up. That night after Nora fell asleep, Eliza stood in the kitchen doorway looking at me. "You didn't just fix the shelf," she said. "I used the right anchors." "No," she said. "You made her feel like she fixed it too." I didn't know what to say. Eliza stepped closer, then stopped. There was only a small space between us, but neither of us crossed it. I was starting to realize I was falling into something bigger than one strange date. And I wasn't sure Eliza had room in her life for it. 3 months after that first night at Riverside Cafe, everything changed. Dana got evicted from her apartment for unpaid rent. She disappeared for 2 days, then sent Eliza one short text. "I need to get back on my feet. Can you keep Nora for a while? I'm in Seattle with a friend. I'll let you know when I'm stable." A while could mean a week. It could mean a year. Eliza read the message in the parking lot of the print shop and immediately called her mother. Her mother only said, "Dana is going through a hard time. Just help your sister. You're so good with Nora anyway." I heard Eliza repeat that sentence over the phone and I hated it instantly. "You're so good with Nora" really meant because you're responsible. We're going to keep piling more responsibility on you. Eliza started the temporary guardianship paperwork. Forms piled up on her kitchen table. School records, medical authorization, court dates, doctor appointments, birth certificates, copies of IDs. Her one-bedroom apartment, already small, turned into a storage unit of clothes, books, and Nora's belongings. Nora slept on the sofa. At first, she didn't complain. Every morning, she folded the blanket, stacked the pillows, and tried to act like she wasn't taking up space. But the more a child tries not to be a burden, the more it breaks your heart watching it happen. Eliza noticed Nora's shoulders were always tense. She saw her hesitate before inviting friends over. She watched her draw a picture of a small room with a door, a desk, and art shelves, then hide the paper. Eliza started avoiding me. I texted to ask if she needed dinner brought over. She said she was busy. I asked about coffee on the weekend. She said Nora was tired. I asked if everything was okay. She only replied, fine. I knew it wasn't fine. One Saturday morning, I was standing in the aisle between plywood and room dividers at the store when I got a long message from Eliza. Marcus, I can't do this right now. Dana basically left Nora with me. I have to handle guardianship papers, school, doctors, rent, everything. I don't have a room for Nora, and I definitely don't have space for a relationship. I can't be someone's girlfriend while I'm trying to become an accidental guardian. You've been so good to me, and I don't want to drag you into this mess. I'm sorry. I read the message twice. I didn't get angry. I didn't feel the childish sting of rejection. I just stood there staring at the pre-built room dividers in front of me. She said she didn't have space. She was right. Her apartment was tiny. But space isn't something you find. It's something you create, if you know how. I looked at the shelf beside me. Temporary walls. Soundproof panels. Tension rods that didn't require drilling. Heavy curtains. Small hanging shelves. Screws, anchors, a level. In my head, I started measuring Eliza's apartment from memory. How many square feet was the living room? Where was the sofa? Which way did the bathroom door open? Could I build a partition in the left corner? Enough room for a twin bed, an art shelf, and a fold-down desk? I opened my notes app and started calculating. This wasn't some grand romantic gesture. I wasn't trying to prove my love. I wasn't saying I'll save you. This was a practical problem. A child needed a place to sleep. A woman believed she had to carry everything alone. I knew how to build a room. Monday, I bought materials at the employee discount. 6 wall panels, tension frames, soundproofing, thick curtains, hanging rods, a small shelf unit, screws, anchors, and a level. I borrowed the store's truck. My coworker Russell looked at the pile and asked, "What are you building?" "A room for my friend's niece, girlfriend." I paused for a second. I don't know if she still wants me to be her boyfriend. Russell nodded. Build it strong. Saturday morning, I showed up at Eliza's apartment at 8. She opened the door in old pajamas, hair tied in a messy knot, dark circles under her eyes. Behind her were piles of clothes, paperwork, and toys. Nora was still asleep on the sofa, curled under 2 blankets. Eliza looked at me, then at the cart full of materials in the hallway. Marcus, what are you doing? I already told you I can't be your girlfriend right now. I don't have the energy for, I know. I don't have space for a relationship, I know. I set the toolbox on the floor. Right now, let's just make space for Nora. She stood frozen. I pulled one panel inside and handed her the other end. Help me hold this. It's a little heavy. Eliza stared at me like I was speaking a language she didn't understand. Marcus, we're just building a wall. Nora needs a real room. You don't have to carry everything heavy by yourself anymore. Now grab the other end. I said it calmly, like it was the simplest thing in the world. And maybe that's why her walls finally cracked. She stepped forward and took the end of the panel. In that moment, I understood something. This wasn't me saving her. This was me handing her one end of a board and saying, "We build this together." Nora woke up around 9:30. When she saw the living room full of construction materials, she looked completely lost. Eliza knelt down and signed that we were building a real room just for her. Nora stood still. Then she looked at me, eyes wide, and signed rapidly. Really? Mine? With real walls, a place for my colors. I signed back. Slow and clumsy, really, yours. We built it together. Nora started crying. We spent the entire day turning that corner of the living room into a small bedroom. I measured. Eliza held the level. Nora handed me screws. I taught her how to use the spirit level, and she loved it so much she started checking if everything else in the apartment was straight. Eliza laughed for the first time in days. By 4 o'clock the partition was finished. A small space just big enough for a twin bed, an art shelf, and a fold-down desk. I added soundproofing on the inside so Nora would feel like she had real privacy. Thick curtains served as a door. Nora stepped inside, stood in the middle of her new room, touched the walls with both hands, then turned around and hugged both Eliza and me at the same time. Eliza cried. I almost did too, but I pretended to check a screw. That night, Nora slept on the air mattress I'd brought inside her new room. Before she fell asleep, she signed something to Eliza. Elisa translated, her voice thick. She says for the first time in a long time she has a place to dream. I sat on the living room floor next to Elisa, my back against the sofa. Her shoulder touched mine. I'm sorry I pushed you away, she whispered. I understand why you did. I thought if things got hard, I had to cut out anything that wasn't necessary. I looked at her. Am I unnecessary? She shook her head, tears falling. No, you're the thing I'm scared of needing too much. I didn't kiss her. Not yet. I just took her hand. Eliza, I'm not afraid of the chaos. I'm afraid you think you have to live in it alone. 3 weeks after we built the partition, the temporary guardianship hearing took place. I wasn't family, so I couldn't stand with Eliza in front of the judge. But I drove her and Nora to the courthouse. I sat in the hallway holding Nora's backpack. Sketchbook, snacks, noise-canceling headphones, and a spare pair of light-up shoes. Eliza wore a white button-up shirt. Hair pulled back neatly, hands trembling slightly as she clutched the folder of documents. Nora sat beside her, constantly looking around because the courthouse hallway was loud and overwhelming. I crouched in front of Nora and signed, "You okay?" She signed back. I'm scared Mom won't come. I'm also scared she will. The words hit me hard. I didn't know the signs for everything I wanted to say, so I used what I had. Uncle's here. Aunt Eliza's here. You're not alone. Nora looked at me for a long second, then nodded. Eliza saw the exchange. Her eyes turned red, but she didn't cry. The hearing lasted less than an hour. Dana didn't show up. The judge granted Eliza temporary guardianship for 6 months and ordered Dana to contact social services if she wanted to change the arrangement. It was a victory. It was also an official burden. When we walked out of the courtroom, Elisa hugged Nora so tightly I thought she might never let go. I stood a few steps away. This moment belonged to them. But Nora pulled Eliza's hand and pointed at me. She ran over and wrapped her arms around my waist. I froze for a second, then hugged her back gently. Eliza watched us. This time she cried. I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. That same evening, when we got back to the apartment, Dana was standing outside the door. She looked thinner than in the photos. Hair messy, eyes exhausted. But what struck me wasn't her appearance, it was the way Nora immediately stepped behind Eliza's legs. Dana tried to smile. Nora, Mommy's here. Nora didn't run to her. Eliza positioned herself slightly in front of her niece. Dana, you can't just show up like this. So you got temporary guardianship and now you're keeping my daughter from me? I didn't take anything. You didn't come to court. Dana looked at me. And who are you? New boyfriend or the free handyman? I stayed silent. This wasn't my fight to start. Dana stepped closer. Nora, get your stuff. Mommy's taking you? Nora gripped Eliza's shirt tighter. Eliza's voice stayed calm, but I could hear the steel underneath. No, you can't take her right now. I have temporary guardianship. If you want to see Nora, we do it through social services properly. Dana gave a bitter laugh. You always did love being the good one, didn't you? You loved being praised for being responsible. You love people looking at you like some kind of savior. Eliza's face went pale. I saw the words hit the deepest fear inside her, that she wasn't really doing this out of love, but because she was addicted to being needed. Nora started breathing fast. She looked between Dana's mouth and Eliza's hands, then became completely overwhelmed. She bolted into her small room and yanked the curtain shut. Eliza turned immediately. Nora, Dana tried to follow. I stepped in front of the curtain. Stop, Dana glared at me. Move, no, you're not family. I met her eyes. You're right. But right now, that little girl is terrified, and any decent adult wouldn't barge into a scared child's safe space. Dana's face hardened. Eliza moved beside me. Not behind me. Beside me. Dana, she said, voice shaking but clear. I love you. I know you're hurting, but I won't let you drag Nora through this just because you feel guilty today. Dana started crying. You think I'm a terrible mother? Eliza was crying too. I think you're a mother who isn't okay right now, and Nora can't keep paying the price for that. The apartment went quiet. Behind the curtain, Nora peeked out through a small gap. I saw her eyes watching us. Dana looked at that narrow opening. The anger on her face slowly crumbled. For the first time, she seemed to understand it wasn't Eliza stealing her child. It was Nora being afraid of her own mother's instability. Dana stepped back. I don't know how to fix everything, she whispered. Eliza wiped her tears. Then start by not breaking anything else. Dana left that night after agreeing to go through social services and not try to take Nora on her own. No one won completely, but Nora stayed safe inside her small room. And sometimes keeping a child safe for one night is the biggest victory you can ask for. After Dana left, Eliza stood in front of Nora's curtain, afraid to pull it open. I signed gently toward the gap. Do you want Aunt Eliza to come in? A moment later, a small hand reached out and pulled the curtain aside. Eliza stepped in and dropped to her knees. Nora wrapped her arms around her and held on tight. I turned away to give them space. That night, after Nora finally fell asleep, Eliza stood beside me in the kitchen. You don't have to stay in this, she said. I know. My life is a mess. I can see that. I can't promise it will get easier. I'm not asking for easy. She looked at me. Then what are you asking for? I stepped closer and touched her face lightly. I'm asking you to stop deciding for me that I should leave. Elisa closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. I love you, Marcus. I stood still. Then I kissed her. It wasn't the kiss of someone coming to rescue her. It wasn't pity. It was the kiss of two people who had built a wall together, protected a child together, and understood that love doesn't always arrive when life is neat and tidy. When we pulled apart, I said, I love you too. Behind the curtain of the small room, a soft sound came from inside. Nora had peeked out, then signed quickly. Eliza laughed through her tears. She says, finally. 6 months later, Eliza's apartment was still small, but it no longer felt like it was trying to swallow too many lives at once. Nora's partition room had become a real little world. I built her a proper wooden bed from pine. There was an art shelf, a moon-shaped nightlight, and pale blue curtains. The walls were covered with drawings, cats wearing hats, houses with big windows. Me with a slightly less square head, Eliza laughing. And one picture of the three of us building a wall together. Dana had started treatment, and was seeing Nora on a supervised schedule. Their relationship wasn't healed, but at least it wasn't an open wound every day. Eliza was still tired. She was still worried. She still woke up at 2 in the morning sometimes to check paperwork. But she no longer tried to prove she could carry everything alone. I still worked at the hardware store. I still counted inventory and argued with whoever kept misplacing the PVC pipes. But my evenings were no longer just reheated food and home improvement shows. Some nights I went over to Eliza's, fixed a drawer, installed a hanging rod, or simply sat on the floor eating pizza, while Nora taught me new signs with strict patience. She was a tough teacher. If I got something wrong, she would cross her arms and look at me like a disappointed professor. One Saturday afternoon in November, we were putting together a new desk for Nora. Eliza sat on the rug, frowning at the instruction manual. I held a panel while Nora stood beside us, giving orders like a construction foreman. Is this panel C or panel E? Eliza asked. I looked. I think it's C. Nora signed rapidly. Eliza burst out laughing. She says you two grown-ups are hopeless. I looked at Nora. Do you want to build it yourself? She signed. I'll do it better. No doubt about it. Nora grinned and ran into her room to grab a pencil. When she came back, she looked at me, then at Eliza. Then she signed something to Eliza. Eliza went quiet for a second, then smiled softly. She says, I was right. He really does have kind eyes. I looked at Nora. She looked back at me with complete seriousness, like this was a scientific conclusion she had verified over many months. I signed slowly. Thank you. You have kind eyes too. Yes, too. You see things before the grown-ups do. Nora smiled, then ran back into her room. Eliza sat down beside me, her shoulder touching mine. I used to think you would leave, she said. I know. Because I was late. Because I brought a child. Because my life was too messy. Because Nora needed too much. Because I didn't have space. I looked at the small wall we had built together. You said you didn't have space. But really, you just needed someone willing to build it with you. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Do you ever regret it? Not leaving the cafe that night? Yeah, I said. I looked at the small room with Nora's light-up shoes neatly placed beside her bed. At Eliza sitting next to me with her hair loosely tied and a smudge of paint on her wrist. Never, not even once. She took my hand. I used to think love showed up when everything was already fixed. When people had healed. When they had space. When they were ready, when life wasn't heavy anymore. But maybe real love doesn't wait for life to be neat. Maybe it arrives in a noisy cafe with a woman who's running late, a deaf little girl, a pair of flashing shoes, and the words signed across the table. He has kind eyes. Maybe love isn't about saving someone. It's about staying when they think you'll walk away. It's about learning a child's language so she knows she's been seen. It's about handing the person you love one end of a board and saying, "Hold this. We're building this together." And when people ask me when I started loving Elisa, I don't say it was when she smiled or when she cried or when we kissed after Dana left. I tell them I started loving her the moment she walked into that cafe carrying the weight of her entire world on her shoulders and still bent down to translate for a little girl who told me, in the first language she ever trusted, that I had kind eyes. Nora saw it before I did. I want to go back for a moment to something I haven't fully explained, because I think it matters more than I gave it credit for at the time. Before Eliza, before Nora, before any of this, I had a version of my life that I had quietly decided was good enough. Not because I believed it was the best version available to me, but because I had stopped letting myself imagine there was a better one waiting somewhere I hadn't looked yet. I'd had one serious relationship in my 20s. With a woman named Priya, who worked in pharmaceutical sales and traveled constantly. We were together for almost 3 years, and it ended the way a lot of long, slow things end, not with a single dramatic moment, but with a gradual erosion of effort on both sides, until one day we looked at each other and admitted we'd been roommates with benefits for longer than either of us wanted to say out loud. There was no villain in that story. Just two people who had stopped choosing each other long before they stopped living together. After that, I told myself I was fine being alone. And mostly I was. The warehouse gave me structure. My apartment gave me quiet. My evenings gave me the specific comfort of routine. The kind that doesn't ask anything of you and doesn't surprise you either. I had convinced myself that this was contentment, when really it was just the absence of disappointment, which is a different thing entirely. Even though it can wear the same clothes if you're not paying close attention. Janelle used to tease me about it. "You've turned into one of those guys who talks about his coffee maker like it's a relationship," she said once, half joking. I laughed it off because what else do you do? But some part of me knew she wasn't entirely wrong, and then the door burst open, and a child with the most direct eyes I had ever seen looked at me like she was reading something true, and told her aunt that I had kind eyes. And the entire architecture of what I'd assumed about my own life quietly began to come apart at the foundation. I think about that a lot. How rarely we get to see ourselves freshly. How most of the people in our daily orbit already have an established opinion of us, formed over months or years. And how that opinion calcifies into something we stop questioning, even when it might not be entirely accurate anymore. Nora had no history with me. She had 30 seconds and a single observation, made without any of the noise adults bring to first impressions, no calculation about whether I was good enough, successful enough, whatever enough. Just a direct read on something true. You have kind eyes. Children see clearly because they haven't yet learned all the reasons adults give themselves for looking away. I think that's part of why her words landed the way they did, and why I've never been able to fully shake them, even months later. Even now, there's a particular kind of trust that built between an adult and a child who communicates differently than most of the world around her. I didn't understand that trust completely until I was inside it. Learning sign language with Russell at the warehouse had been practical, instructions, safety terms, basic courtesy. Learning it with Nora was different. Every sign I got right was a small bridge built between two people who otherwise might have remained strangers, separated by something that didn't have to separate us at all. Every sign I got wrong and corrected with her exacting patience was a lesson in humility that I badly needed and didn't know I needed until I was receiving it. I think about the night the shelf fell. How small that moment seemed in the larger architecture of everything that came after it, the guardianship hearing, the confrontation with Dana, the partition wall we built together. But I've come to believe that the small moments are often where the real decisions get made, even when we don't recognize them as decisions at the time. I could have offered to fix the shelf myself, quickly, efficiently, the way I fix most things. Instead, I chose to teach Nora how to fix it, to hand her the tools and the patience and the belief that she was capable of doing something difficult correctly. That choice told her something about how I saw her, long before I had the words to tell her directly. Eliza noticed that. She told me later it was the moment she started to understand I wasn't just someone she'd met by accident on a chaotic Friday night, but someone whose patience ran deeper than convenience. I didn't think of it that way at the time. I just thought a kid needed to learn how a level worked, and that teaching her felt better than doing it for her. Where Elisa walked in 3 minutes later to an empty booth and a confirmation of exactly what she'd been afraid people would think of her, that bringing a child with her to a date made her too complicated. Too much, not worth the inconvenience. I think about how easily that version could have happened. How reasonable it would have seemed at the time, how no one would have blamed me for it, but I didn't send it. And because I didn't, I got to learn an entire language I didn't know I needed. Build a room out of nothing for a child who needed somewhere safe to dream. And fall in love with a woman who had spent years being everyone else's safety net without anyone offering to be hers. Some people get their lives changed by a single, enormous moment. Mine got changed by 23 minutes of waiting and the decision not to leave during the 24th.